All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us today if you're in the chat right now. I'm John Ross. I am the lead engineer on Sumire, and I'm here with Michael Ely, the writer and director of Sumire. We're also here with Erica. She does marketing with Game Tomo, and she's done UI art and design for Sumire. She'll be in the chat, helping us out with moderation and working on the giveaways that we'll be doing. So Sumire was made by a lot of people, a lot of talented artists, musicians, and designers. But yeah, Michael and I here, we've been working on the game back since early February 2019, and we wanted to share with you guys a bit about the process of building this game. So yeah, Michael, you want to start us out? Could you talk about how Sumire first got started?
Yeah, real quick, it started from a story about a girl that finds a flower that only has one day to live, and so she has to give that flower the best day ever. This felt like a theme that people could relate to, and something that could be done with a small team, because the team at the beginning was really tiny.
Right.
So we felt, Game Tumble wanted to make a game. We felt like this was something that we could really do and build into something special. And this is what we ended up with.
Yeah, it's been an awesome process. All right, so real quick, I mentioned the giveaway. So we have a tweet that we just posted on Twitter. It's on the Twitter GameTomoEN. Erica, could you actually post the link in the chat right now? But if you retweet this tweet at any point during the stream, you'll be entered into a giveaway for a Sumire game code, either for Steam or Nintendo Switch. So yeah, when you see that link, go ahead and retweet it. But yeah, we're just gonna dive into the game here and start sharing a bit about. Start a new game here. I'm gonna go full screen for this opening cutscene.
These opening panels were concept sketched by Nakazawa-san, who's our lead artist, and then Oda-san, our 2D artist, would draw them up. And she, it was always a great moment when Oda-san would send over the final panels, and we would all get to open them up, and we were just excited to see them as anybody. We use Discord, by the way. We basically live in Discord, especially during COVID times.
Yeah, that opening cutscene, it went through a lot of versions too. At one point, Sumire, she had a plan to go visit her dad in Tokyo. We moved away from that, but we had all of these rough concept versions, and when we finally got these final renders in, it really just felt right. I'm gonna switch back to our camera view here. So the game just starts here with, her having that dream about her grandma and just trying to figure out what it meant.
We use these camera movements to guide people through the house at the beginning, because when someone starts a game, they don't know anything about where they are, what they're doing, or how to move or anything. And this game is pretty simple, but we still wanted to make sure there was no confusion or frustration for the players when they were moving around at the beginning of the game. So people who have played know the house is 2 levels, so there's actually a front part, which the player hasn't seen yet. So we were kind of using these cameras, which John actually implemented to kind of point people around the house and get them kind of used to the world and how they could move around.
Yeah, I think when a lot of people see trailers for Sumire and even play the game for the first time, the first impression is that it might actually be a 2D game. So especially right here, we're in the back of the house, so I don't think it's immediately clear that the players can move forward and backward as well. So we're actually coming up to when she moves here with the seed. We have a camera movement that pulls forward to really show, okay, I can move to the front of the house now.
Nice kneeling animation.
Yeah, we use Spine for the 2D animations. It's that's a tool where artists can bring together 2D textures into an editor and rig the animations and build them. And there's a integration with Unity as well. I don't think I mentioned that. This is built in Unity 3D, and Spine and Unity 3D work really well together.
So for the dialogues, we used Yarn in this tool called Yarn Spinner, and it's basically a tool that lets you do a bunch of nodes that you can connect in all these different ways, and then you can also do custom commands. So John would rig up custom commands, and then I was typing all the dialogues and everything into Yarn, which this file just got bigger and bigger and bigger as the game got bigger. But also it controlled the emotes, the facial expressions of all the characters. And like right up until almost the end, this flower had no expression when it was in the pot. It would just kind of sit there smiling at you. And this is like a really important moment when she's kind of making her connection to the flower. So John gave me a bunch of emotes so I could kind of change the flower's reactions and things. Nakazawa-san was doing all the faces. So personally, I hated putting in emotes. Like I would wait until I liked writing dialogue, but I hated like kind of going through the dialogue and dropping in all these expressions. So I would wait until the last possible minute to do it.
It ended up making a big difference once they were in there.
Yeah, it had to be done. But there's always some frustrating thing, that you just have to kind of wake up one morning, get your coffee, and do it.
Yeah.
Now the flower's floating.
Yeah, but basically, Yarn is great because basically anything that's happening during a dialogue, we can control from a Yarn command. So whether it's animation or emotes like you're talking about, later on we have entire tutorials where all of the logic for the tutorial is just done in one Yarn node. So that was also great to work with.
Walking over to Mom.
Yep, see Mom there. A lot of streamers have had some crazy reactions to seeing Mom for the first time.
Yeah, for the record, Mom is not drunk.
She's not hungover.
There's no wine in the house. She's just very, very depressed.
Not demon possessed. But Mom's dream was not actually always here. This is something you wanted to talk about. I'm gonna switch over. This is one of the first development videos you want to show you guys. Let me switch over here.
Yeah, so in the early builds, this is a movie, so we can't stop, but the Sumire's room was in the front of the house, and it was like this princess room with this pink bed, and it was kind of a fantasy world. And we went back and forth a lot, and in particular, I was worried about how much time the player would spend in the house, because the outside in the sky was really like the key visual thematic of the game, this sky that changed as she lived her day all the way to sunset. So when we had the house set up like this, you couldn't this was the first place where you woke up, so you couldn't see the sky, and you were kind of in this closed environment. I was worried how long we were going to spend in here. And one day we got the idea to move her bedroom to the back of the house, because the way John had set everything up, you can see the sky through the windows. So it felt like she was waking up, and then you could see the sky out those doorways and see how beautiful it was, but you weren't quite there yet. So that felt like a really good move. So we took her bedroom, moved it to the back. And then, of course, we made it, we put her on the floor on the futon. So we made it less of a happy fantasy kind of beginning, which worked really well, too. But those stars that were hanging from the ceiling, we picked those up and put them, stuck them to the wall, because we liked the glowing stars. It was like maybe something her dad made for her. So that felt like a hint of, her dad doing something cool for her.
Yeah, so we saw the stars back here as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, starting the first scene in the game here with the big window here instead of the old one, and the light rays coming in, which is something that Shibuya-san, he's the producer and VFX artist for the game. He was able to add that, as well as a lot of amazing lighting effects in the game. But I think one of the things that really makes the sky stand out is actually the relation of the sky to having this curved world. And having the curved world like this is, that was one of the very first ideas that we started working with when we started developing Sumire. And I have a quick GIF I can show you guys of just kind of the way that the world is structured. So right now, we're on what we call the house tile. So next we'll be going into the backyard tile. But we broke up the world into these separate tiles, both for reasons of optimization and so, different developers can easily work on the art and the layout for the different parts of the world. And as Sumire moves around the world, we unload tiles that we don't need, and we load these new ones up as they go.
The funny thing about this is you actually wrap around the world over and over and over again. And so like when we were setting everything up, you would sometimes hear the sound of the tile that it used to be. So you would like hear the stream at the bus stop or something like that, because actually you were in the same location on the curve.
Right. So let me go back to that GIF just for a second here. So if you see like when we start in the house, this position in world space, in the XYZ coordinate, once you get over here to the shrine, you're kind of in the same place in the world. So we did run into some bugs where if location was important for something technical going on in the game, that we have to make sure that it's only unique to that tile and it isn't happening globally. I want to make a quick comment about the music here. I want everyone to just take a second. Let me turn it up if it's turned down a little bit here. But this song that you hear right now, it's gonna slowly start to change as we head outside. So the audio system for the game, we're using adaptive audio. So a lot of the songs in the game have different layers that we can switch between based on what's going on. The music for the game was done by a Japanese group called Toe, and working with them, they just inspired us with so much stuff. Just the way that Oda-san, she would give us art assets sometimes that would inspire design. Same with working with the music for Toe.
If you interact with that guitar, people who play the game, you
do it real quick.
Depending on your karma score, you get a little notes played. So if you're doing bad stuff in the game, you get bad notes. And like the Toe's guitar player couldn't play bad notes, so somebody else had to record the bad notes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Here we go outside. First look at the sky.
So if you listen to the music now, we start the conversation with the flower and you hear this new guitar part that has come in here. And it's not even done yet.
By the way, we're showing this on Steam also, Steam and Twitch and YouTube, if people have a preferred place to look.
And we're going to open our notebook for the first time here.
Notebook's one of those things that we went through several versions, just redoing the UI over and over and over again to make it feel natural. And Erica actually did the art for this. It's nice.
Yeah, I went through a lot of versions. I think we'll be showing some of those old versions later on. Now here we go, listen. So all of those music layers changing as we're coming out of the house finally built up to, this is what we call the morning theme. Throughout Sumire, the time of day changes, and we have a morning theme song, an early afternoon theme song, late afternoon, and then evening. And as you play through the full game, you'll get to experience all the different versions and all the different layers of those songs as different events happen in the game.
And John actually did audio programming on previous games he worked on, so like John really dug in and made a lot of cool audio mixing features for this. It feels really natural, you almost don't notice it, but that's actually takes a while to get things to that point.
Yeah, something I've sometimes been dragged into, sometimes have had fun doing, but for Sumire, it was a lot of fun. We worked with one Unity asset called AMP to do the adaptive audio, but we found that it just didn't work for some things, like when we had a song with an intro, and we didn't want that intro to loop. We had to pull back and end up writing a music system just custom for Sumire, and something that just really worked well with the music that we were getting from Toe.
Yeah, this is one of those little choices that, unlike a lot of choices in the game, the choice of whether you forget or remember your grandmother, we wanted to kind of like have these little bridges into people's real lives during the game, so people would think and reflect about their own lives from time to time. So that was the first little planted moment where it's like, what would you do? Is it better to remember or to forget? There's no like wrong answer. It's just a choice that the player has to make to get the dialogue continued.
Right. So we
First
just got our first task here from the cat. So before this page was empty, our to-do page in the notebook, but now we have one task. And this was actually a part of the notebook that we tried out several different versions. And I'm gonna switch over real quick to one of those older versions.
Oh yeah, here it comes.
So in this system, every time Sumire got a new task, she would write the task on a sticky note and then put that in her notebook. And then later on in the game, once she has more than 2 tasks, she has to replace another one. And
yeah, so this.
Go ahead.
Oh, just that this was a design that we tried out to try to hit that theme again of like you have limited time and there's only so much you can do in your day, in your life. So it was actually a mechanic where you had to choose which tasks were most important, and it actually worked. It worked pretty well. It was pretty interesting, but it took away a bit from the player's ability to manage what they were going to do during their day. So it wasn't a bad thing, but it was something we ultimately felt like didn't give the best experience of the day as a whole.
Right. I think some of those design choices of, forcing the player to think about, how much time they have ended up just coming into more constraints with when you can go back and visit one of these creatures, what time of day you can come back, and, what items you need to have when you go back. Alright, switch back to the game here. And we'll find that bell-shaped flower for the cat.
This is the first task, so it's the only task that you have to do. Because we wanted to guide people into the game mechanics, how things worked. We actually originally you didn't have to do it, or at some point there was the option where you could just kind of be really mean to the cat and not do it. But we decided it's better to really teach people this.
Right. Once we started focusing on having a negative karma run in the game, it did kind of make sense to don't let them do anything good. Maybe only allow bad choices. But we thought we should still keep in, the cat task just to make sure that tutorial was always there.
The funny thing is because you get coins for doing this, that means you automatically always have enough coins to cross the river. But at one point, you didn't necessarily have enough coins to cross the river, so you either had to kind of, say something mean to the heron. That comes up later if you haven't played the game.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Or you have to find the coins in the world.
So I've already been sprinting a lot in this game. One of the engineers on Sumire, Kai, he joined the project about a year in, and one of his first comments on playing the game was, "We need to add sprint." Like when Sumire is moving around the world, that would help out a lot, and I think that was a great choice. But this is where we actually teach it for the first time to the player. I think a lot of players figure it out beforehand, but here I'm playing keyboard right now, so it's just holding down shift, I can start running around. Alright, and now we're coming to what we call our first mini-game. Mini-game is kind of a word we use to cover all of the interactions, both some mini-games that come up as a separate screen and some that are like this in the overworld. But minigames are another thing that we went through a lot of iteration on. So I'm actually going to show real quick when you meet this crow. This rice field crow has been in the game since the beginning, but we had a different idea for a minigame when we this was back in March 2020 here.
Yeah, so at this point in the design, which was actually how it was originally, we wanted mini games to kind of give some just variety and some things to do that were connected to the story. But we had more mini games, and then you would actually cut to a different, this kind of 2D environment. So each mini game had its own kind of presentation, and yeah, and we were planning to have like 20 or 30 of them in there. We'll talk more
Right.
about that in a little while, but basically each mini game you would kind of cut away from the main world. But we ended up reducing the number of mini games, and then we finally realized like all of the mini games, if we were careful, we could do them inside the main world,
Hmm.
which meant the player would never have to leave the world and kind of break their immersion. This one actually is fun though. This is like the most fun because you can't hit the flower and you have to hit the crow. We
Yeah.
actually talked about putting this in as an Easter egg in the hot spring.
And these mini games that would pop up, we're actually like referencing games like WarioWare, where you just play these little, quick, simple mini games over and over, with the idea that they could be, made really quickly, and both art and tech. We could have, just a lot of these in the game really fast. And they were designed to be intentionally abstract. Like it's not exactly what Sumire's seeing in front of her in real life. It's more her encountering, some emotional struggle or her interpretation of what's actually happening to her, and we're almost kind of seeing what's happening in her mind. But yeah, let's jump back to the game and we'll show you what we actually ended up with for meeting this rice field crow.
Yeah, so conceptually it's the same thing happening now, but we get to stay in this beautiful overworld, and it was really cool because the flowers kind of hiding behind her.
But just a simple dodge mechanic.
Another debate we had was like, how hard should mini games be? Like, do we want to get things that are actually frustrating for people that more hardcore people would like, or do we want something that just adds a little variety and a little fun? And of course, we ended up doing the more simple games, and also we wanted to have skip mechanics into each one, so you can skip the game if you want to.
Right.
Throw the stone. That's the first bad karma moment. Shibuya-san did those karma flowers. That's one of the visual effects he did. So there's blue if you kind of do the more kind choice, and red if you kind of do the violent choice. Mr. Scarecrow. So in the original game design, you couldn't talk to all these things in the world, and then Oda-san was basically sending over these like incredible 2D images, and the things she was putting in there, like the scarecrow and the frog and all these other things, were just so cute that you just had to talk to them. So we ended up making adding this thing where Sumire, like, the world is coming alive around her, and she's talking to all these creatures.
Yeah, and not all of them ended up being, task given. I'm gonna run back to he's back here, the salamander. Or was he down that other one, I think?
I think he's down the other one.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines. You don't scare me. I wasn't trying to. But like that's another example there. Oda-san, we're doing concepts for the rice field, and she sends us, just this little salamander, and then, I go and add in an interaction point in Unity. Michael adds a new node into Yarn for that, and yeah, suddenly there's a new little character in the game.
By the way, it's just reminding me, the rice field went through a ton of versions because it has water, and like we didn't have, like, what is water going to look like in our game? We didn't have a big water thing at the beginning, and we had like originally the little plants were tiny, and like that took some work to get the rice field natural.
Yeah, definitely. Right here's one of we call them the idle dialogues. Just if Sumire either goes 30 seconds without accomplishing anything, she doesn't talk to anyone or interact with anything, or she just stands still for, I think it's 8 seconds, then a dialogue like this comes up and just helps the player figure out what they were doing. So here the flower says, yeah, we're going to the wisteria tree. Just a nice little reminder there. Skip past the turtle today. Sorry, Mr. Turtle.
Testers love that turtle. There's our Jizo that you have to put the coat on. There's actually near where I live is one of these Jizo statues, and this old woman comes. I see her putting the coat on the Jizo when it's raining, so that was kind of part of the inspiration for that.
The story itself, you were inspired by a certain area of Japan, right?
Yeah, the shrine was inspired by a shrine in near Kobe that I visited. Yeah.
That's right.
And the hot spring was inspired by one that was up to the north. Here's our heron. Blocking the stream. Yeah, the water effect on the stream, that came in pretty late in development too.
So we're about to cross the stream here, and this is another part of the game that changed a lot, with going from 2D to 3D, and wondering about, should Sumire actually walk through the stream, should she jump over rocks? We went through a lot of versions here, and actually real quick I'll do kind of like what I did for the Crow mini game. Let me just show some of those old versions real quick. Couple versions of trying out some jumping. So on the left here we have a very old 2D version where the rocks would come up and she would just automatically jump from rock to rock, and then on the right was trying an actual jump where she had to land it. Now we have no jumping in the game at all, which I think was a good decision to just kind of keep things simple. Other than this moment in the game, there really wasn't a need for it.
Yeah, it was really fun to jump, but the actual use of the jumping was, these rocks, and then also, we could hide some floating coins or whatever. We were doing that for a while, but ultimately there just wasn't enough reason to jump. And then once you have jumping, you have to worry about where people are going to do it, what they think it's going to do.
All right, just a quick reminder, anyone watching right now, we are running a giveaway. Erica, if you could again post the link to the tweet in all the chats. We're streaming on Steam, we're streaming on YouTube and Twitch right now, so we're looking at 3 different chats. But yeah, if you retweet this tweet, you'll be entered in a giveaway to win a game code for Sumire. And we'll be doing the first one of those pretty soon here. So this is the
eye close effect.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this is the version we ended up with. So to cross the stream, she actually has to close her eyes. You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, Shibuya-san made this effect of the eye closing, and we used it here because at first it was because first we had this jumping across the stream on the rocks, and then we had this thing where she walks across, but it didn't look quite right with our water because her feet would change the flow of the water. So we did this eyes closed thing, which actually ended up really cool because you can see those visual sound effects as she steps across. And the eye close animation, it was, again, once we had it, I ended up using it later to make these moments where players would kind of reflect on maybe something that's going on with themselves, because it was such a cool effect. And once I had the yarn command, I could kind of drop it in anywhere. I think for a while I was going a little crazy with the eyes closing. We had to,
it was something I was always personally
pull it out.
Yeah, I was always a bit worried about the black screen, but I realized that is something that we did try to keep as a theme of the game, was getting the player to self-reflect. And I told Michael at one point that those eye close moments, it literally kind of turns the player's screen into a mirror where they can look at themselves for a bit. So I think those really worked out well. So right there after crossing the stream, we actually hit our first time of day change. You see the sky is a bit brighter now, the stars are gone. And that's another mechanic that was in the game since the very beginning. And I'm actually gonna jump to another video here and show one of the very first prototypes, the 2D prototype that we had for Sumire here. So in this version, so this is an older, character concept. It's completely 2D. The idea here was that, as she moved forward, as the world rotated, time would just move immediately with that. And instead, we went with more of a system where it's based on events. So there, it was when crossing the stream, time moved forward. So that made a lot more sense instead of time just being this constant thing based on the where she was in the world.
And this is also like the first prototype. So we had the curved world and the right to left movement even back then. But this of course wasn't the final character, but we had like some of the early elements. But back then you would kind of collect things. So you would have to find and collect stars, and then we actually were using the mouse. So if you just saw that happen, you drew a diamond in the sky with your mouse. But we got rid of the mouse interaction and kind of this idea that you were collecting a bunch of stuff. I think both of those changes were really good in the end. But this was kind of the first conception of how the game would play. If you can imagine, without like the mini scenes and mini games and stuff, like spending, hours just kind of walking on this circle, like it looks really cool, but at some point it's going to get really boring. So
Yeah.
you always have to kind of keep opening things up and adding things for variety.
Interesting thing just about, so both this 2D version and the 3D version we have now use the same idea of the tiles, these tiles that are connected in pieces as she moves around. And in this version though, the world rotates. She actually stays in the same place in world space, and as she moves the world is rotating. But in the new 3D version, the tiles, they actually stay in the same place in world space, and Sumire is actually moving across them. So that was an interesting jump between the 2D version and the 3D version. But we'll talk more about that jump later.
There's the one little flower jump place. I really like that effect.
I can't help but pick up the coins in this game. It's actually something we never directly explain to the player, but I think most people, when they see shiny sparkles on the ground, they figure out, oh, I should go interact with that. But yeah, another very simple effect made by Shibuya-san that before coins used to actually float in the world. We had them floating, and when there was jumping as well, so you'd have to jump to grab coins. But having them as those interactives on the ground ended up looking really great.
Walking into the scene, so this is what we call mini scenes. This is where you walk into the screen along the z-axis instead of right to left. And then the way John set up the world, it was really easy to make I assume it was kind of easy to make these, at least. We had to decorate them and deal with the kind of how you moved in these scenes.
Right.
But
they're just
it
set
was
up
really
as
refreshing.
Yeah, they are just set up as separate Unity scenes. So as far as managing them, it was pretty simple. That did come with additional like technical concerns of how do we load it. We do have to have loading screens between these.
But it was again another place where to kind of break up the right to left movement, give the player somewhere to go into,
and even back in the 2D version, we had those mini scenes. In the 2D version though, we tried this sort of mode where it was this first person perspective, and she was moving between layers of 2D sprites. It was again something very abstract, sort of like the old 2D mini games. But yeah, I think the final version worked out.
More cute creatures.
Say hi to the lizard real quick.
As you do good and bad things in the game, you get karma, and we don't show the karma score. So if you do bad stuff and good stuff, it kind of does plus and minus, and we do track it, but we don't show the player directly what that score is, and it changes the ending depending on what that score is, what happens at the end of the game. But the two ways you can kind of know what's happening is the flower changes color when you hit a certain point. It has like a brighter version, this kind of red version. But also there was a couple things like we call that the karma lizard. The lizard will tell you if you're doing good or bad depending on what your score is. He kind of hints at it. Here's our frog.
Yeah, there's a couple other dialogues and characters in the game that will give you hints what your current karma is. So I don't think we're gonna reveal all of those here today. So I'm actually curious if I go with some bad karma on the frog here. I wonder if we'll get the flower to change color. I think I'm close. So
these spiders are actually like the shrine I was talking about in Kobe actually had these big spiders. I mean, they're these giant colorful things. I think they're the model for the ones in that you see in Zelda sometimes, but they're really pretty, but they're huge, and they actually do, line the paths in some of these shrines. And so this little guy, kind of knows who the frog is.
I want to say the species is like orb weaver, golden orb weaver. Is that what they are? But yeah, I've read they're like good luck, right? Like one of my old share houses, the stairs leading up to it would have them all over, and I finally looked them up, and they're your friends. So I'm like, oh, cool. I don't have to worry about them.
As long as they don't get like in front of the path, as long as they stay off to the side, they're fantastic.
So if you missed that right there, the frog, he just asked for some food. He's hungry. He wants a fly. The spider said you can come back in the afternoon for a fly, but we realized, well, the frog can, also eat the spider. So we're gonna go ahead and give him the spider instead. He didn't change. It's probably because I gave the coins to the heron when I crossed. I did the good thing there, so I think I'm karma neutral right now.
Yeah, for a while, helping creatures was actually a task that you had to check off, but instead we changed it more to let it be the player choice to help these different creatures, and then they would get some karma and coins, so you still would get the positive experience, but it used to be like a notebook item was help 8, creatures and people.
Right, it was one of the perfect list items.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Here we're entering the shrine mini scene. If you've ever been to a shrine in Japan, the custom is the first thing you do is you wash your hands. And this was another spot where we actually, in the older version, we were trying to have, really tiny mini games all over the place. This was another spot where we tried a mini game. We're going to show that to you real quick.
There it is.
So we showed the stone throw minigame where we were throwing the stone at the crow, and the idea when we were going to have a lot of mini games all over the place was that the mini scenes would have mini games that built on mechanics of the ones that you played prior. So we had the stone throw as well as a memory mini game on the big stone that's in the backyard. It's sort of like Simon with buttons you have to push. And then this game was sort of bringing both the memory minigame concept together with, aiming. Here you're aiming the spoon as opposed to a rock that from the stone throw game. I'll jump back into the game here.
In this model, the big crow was like the boss. So we would kind of the idea was to make a series of mini games and then kind of combine them in different ways, and then you would have to kind of face one big thing at the end, which in this case was the crow.
Right.
The big crow, the crow queen as we call her. And then this was of course red light, green light. What's about to come up, which it turns out there's there's versions of that all around the world where you stop moving when someone looks at you. In English, it's red light, green light, and then there's a name for it in Japanese.
I moved too soon.
Yeah, you got caught. This one is kind of cool with the sound effects. Again, it used to be a 2D game where a little 2D Sumire was trying to make it to this crow on the other side of the screen.
And this is another one that just made so much sense to bring into the overworld. Okay, I gotta focus here. tweaked the AI for these two birds a lot. They can either turn together at the same time, one after the other, slightly offset, or each one on its own. But really, again, trying to not make it too hard, because we have, you know, a lot of people just playing this casually for the story. And again, if they want to quit, we have that option. We can, you know, they can choose to end the game or cancel and, you know, keep trying. Do you want to talk a bit about the big picture of the crows in the game? Just sort of like what they represent? I'm wondering if that's something that players are picking up on.
Yeah, I noticed people talk about the crows. So the crows are the idea in the game is, you know, they're kind of a bad guy, but we didn't really have like this truly evil bad thing that you had to beat, you know, because usually life isn't really like that. But
Right.
what the crows are, I think the flower actually refers to them this way at the lunch conversation, but I was calling them the resisting force. So the crows were not necessarily this evil thing, but there's something that wants her to stay in her place, that wants her not to change and not to kind of branch out and see the world. So
Right, like the,
yeah,
like the flower is something that's coming in and changing the shape,
Exactly.
kind of changing the timeline, if you will. And
Right.
the crows, they're the force trying to keep order. I think I compared it
And
once to like the Empire in Star Wars. You know, they're not really bad; they're just trying to keep order.
But it reminds me of you know, it's partly inspired by like the kind of like Miyazaki stories where you know, there's not really a bad guy that's beat at the end. It's just sort of like a return to order. But in this case, we wanted a bit of the element of like, you know, the counter force to her living her great day is the thing inside of her that wants to keep her in you know, sad and like locked in the house. So the crows are kind of a representation of that, always trying to stop her. And she always keeps having to move past them. And here we go. This another effect by Shibuya-san. This is the golden. So this golden effect, we used to use it in several places. And there was sort of an idea of like when the flower turns gold, he was going to say something kind of wise or you know, more information than he would usually have. But you know, when you do something like that, it has to be really clear, like why is the flower turning gold? What's so special about those words? So we kind of, it wasn't totally working, so we kind of kept it just in this one spot, which is a really special moment, making her wish at the shrine.
As well as later, if you bless the honey, that's a kind of a secret spot where you can maybe see the golden flower again as well. Now is where she finally writes her full perfect day list.
Yeah, so the list changed a few times during the development. You know, for a while. So actually, the original game, the Sumire character was younger, and so kind of getting, you know, the further she went from her house, the more of a big deal it was. So the list actually contained things like, you know, get to town, like make it to town, and these kind of more like physical challenges that she had to do. But we ended up with these items that are more emotion based. Like there's things that unresolved things inside of her is what's actually driving her perfect day list. So that was actually that was pretty good change. But there was a time when the list was things like, you know, make it to town and you know, help the creatures and things like that. We got a question from a Japanese viewer. What's our favorite part or location of the game?
Oh wow.
Nice question. I like it's not the visually best, but I really like the Kenji clubhouse with the rain. Because it just reminds me of, I really like being inside in the rain with the rain kind of pattering on the roof. So that's one moment, going into the clubhouse with that piano in the rain. And then the other one is, I like the onsen. The onsen scenes are really pretty.
I really like what we call the playground area. We'll show it right after town, but I think just the framing of the background, the houses in the background, the tree, just visually one of my favorite moments in the game. And we'll actually head down into town now.
We were talking about earlier, John and I were talking about this forest as being, one of the more richly designed parts of the game with the way the trees are back there. And it was really cool because the artist managed to get it, because again, the sky is like the really important visual symbol in the game, and being able to have this kind of rich forest but still see the colors of the sky through there worked really well.
Right. I'd mentioned that our first time of day change actually happens right at crossing the stream. So when you get here to the wisteria tree, you kind of have this opening, so you'll probably catch that, you don't have this starry sky anymore. It's like time is moving on. But for the most part, the trees are kind of covering it. And then, when we go down to town here, we have our next time of day change, and the player really understands, okay, time is moving forward, the day is moving on, I got to get this list done. But having the trees in the background like this on these curved tiles really, it kind of creates like this cool parallax effect of moving back and forth and having objects sort of come over the horizon and then hide back behind it. But it was a bit of a challenge to build these, so we had to come up with some development tools. I'm going to show a quick, this is a quick gift from Unity. So again, all of our tiles, they're connected together like this. They're this shape, this sort of this cut apart sphere. They're all connected with these link points. The gift actually wanted to show. Sorry, it was our tile builder tool right here. So Nakazawa-san, she's our artist that she did a lot of the world building, taking Oda-san's art, cutting those up into textures and placing them in the world. But placing things on these tiles is actually a little bit difficult to, get everything aligned properly. So we ended up building this tool where you could take, an entire batch of textures and both clamp them to the ground and then orient them to the ground. And then, every tree is aligned correctly for exactly where it's placed on that curved world.
Start jump spot down the hill. This kind of masks the tiles, kind of went up into the sky, because she's basically going down a cliff, but we didn't really have a cliff.
Yeah, so having those tiles, kind of the town, having it still connected back to that forest, with a world on a curve, having a cliff was a bit tricky. So, yeah.
The town music mixing was pretty fun. Mm-hmm. The beat, of course, the beats, like each time you enter a space, the rhythm and the beats match perfectly. But it was really fun because each shop has a different feeling in it.
Yeah, I'd mentioned the adaptive music system before, and this is, I think, one of my favorite uses of that system here in the town. So you hear that melody line keeps going, but the instrumentation changes a bit as we enter the stationery shop here.
The whole town is kind of a gamey area in the sense of, kind of talking to characters on the, these 2D characters and kind of buying things and getting little missions and stuff.
I think in a really old version, we actually went straight from the forest, that cliff down, went to the playground. There wasn't even a town, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah. So it's a little bit, it is fun, especially because you're collecting coins and you can buy all this kind of stuff. My favorite is
I think I'm gonna buy the star pen actually.
Nice.
We have some, you can see I have that new pen there. There's some cosmetic stuff you can buy for the game. There's pens, shoes, hair accessories, and I'm not sure if everyone who's played noticed, but you can actually switch back. There's a feature, kind of an equip feature here in the inventory here. I can switch between my pens.
Remember one streamer like spent all her coins in town, and then she couldn't call her dad when she got to the onsen. That was
yeah.
that was a sad, funny moment.
But here we have our first character. Yeah, it's Chie.
Yeah, so once the world was 3D, things like this scene are interesting because John had to set up these specific camera and character standing points because you didn't know exactly how the player was going to approach this area, but we wanted it framed well because you're going to basically have this entire conversation.
Yeah, the big ones were the dialogue move points, which is where characters stand or move during a dialogue, and then the dialogue cameras. And I showed that tile builder tool before, where we use that to align objects to the tiles. But that's something I also had to do for these dialogue standpoints in the cameras, because if you think about these cameras moving during the dialogue, these are also can be rotated any way in world space. Right now the y-axis might be something like this since we're in town.
This this kind of long conversation with Chie with several choices. So in the very early versions of the game, these characters were very two-dimensional, so you didn't talk to them that much, you didn't see them. And the idea I was trying to do was to make them kind of stand-ins for people in the player's own life, but so they were very simple and kind of like very cardboard characters, but the team had a lot of feedback of like you don't really understand these characters and the relationships, and they wanted to see more. So I added a lot of longer dialogues, and it seems to work pretty well. Like I think you get a lot better sense now of your relationship to this character. I mean, Chie's kind of interesting because she's a bully and a jerk, but she needs some kind of feeling of redemption. Like she's not completely beyond hope or completely an evil character.
We're about to see why the way she is pretty understandable, based on her upbringing. We'll see her mother in a second here. Yeah, adding depth to the characters, I think that's something that improved a lot too once we started adding all these choices in. Once karma became a bigger mechanic, you have throughout this conversation too, Chie's trying to trip you up with trying to bully Bo and say other things, and I think that was the moment when we were both trying to improve and increase the depth of the characters and add karma, that those kind of really came together at the same time.
And it's also, like I was saying earlier, I had to go through and add the emotes for so both the flower and Sumire have to be reacting to everything that's being said, and it was it's something that had to be done, but it was like my least favorite thing to do was to go in and kind of sprinkle these commands all over the place. This is that eye close moment again. So again, we had this great eye close thing, so we used to go into the memory scenes. And originally there was only one memory scene, which was the mom and dad on the beach that happens at lunch. But that felt like a nice moment, a time to look back in the past a bit. And Nakazawa-san was able to take the yard. Obviously this is the yard, but she kind of blew out the sky with this kind of white mist. So we were able to kind of make this new memory scene without having to generate a lot of new assets. There's Chie back in the day when they liked each other.
Between the mini scene system and reusing the same backyard tile, we got these memory scenes in really quick. Just a good way to kind of again add more depth to some of these characters by learning about their past. Chie with her party at the same time as Sumire's party. So terrible.
Cold, man.
Yeah.
These kids are cold. See the gacha machine back there, so we try to put fun stuff in. You can spend your coins trying to get what are there, like five different items in the gacha machine. Post office is closed. Johnny's.
I'm gonna hop in here just to hear the music again.
Johnny's is so in Japan they have these they call them family restaurants. One is Denny's, which is an American chain that jumped over to Japan, and then one is called Jonathan's. So Johnny's is kind of a combination, but you know they kind of look like this with the plastic booths and the waitresses with their you know special outfits. And the music though, they play this music, this kind of looping music that sounds a lot like what we use for the inspiration here. So going into Johnny's and like spending 500 yen on a drink bar is definitely something that people do.
Yeah, honestly, my go-to for a lunch spot is these in Japanese called a famiresu, or in English a family restaurant. But good cheap food, unlimited drinks, it's great. I remember I talked about Chie's mom, so I realized I had to go in and show Chie's mom here.
This is also where you can buy most of your cool stuff.
Right. So we told the Jizo back by the stream that we would get him a coat, but I spent my money on a pen, so fortunately we cannot afford the coat. But this is also where you can get new shoes and flowers.
We're about to go into we call it the playground because originally it was a playground, but now it's turned into more of like a nice field behind the town. Got the nice blue sky with the clouds, and there's Kenji.
This is the spot I was talking about earlier. I think it's actually when she gets closer here and zooms in. Just yeah, the framing of the shot here, just with the tree and Kenji sitting and the houses in the background, and of course the sky. One of my favorite screenshots from the game.
I like the flower. The flower push was a great animation because the idea that the flower's kind of pushing her to do stuff she doesn't want to do, that was always a part of the story. But when we got that animation in where the flower is like pushing and she's kind of leaning back, I think everyone knows that feeling of kind of being pushed into something they don't want to do, but that might be good for them.
Yeah, I was always kind of worried when we first started talking about that it would have to be some complex synced animation with the flower and Sumire, but really I just put an attach point on Sumire, moved the flower there, and like just attached the flower to Sumire and just moved them at the same time, and it worked out. Everyone really liked it. Yeah.
Originally, the Kenji, again, I was saying that originally the characters were more flat, and Kenji was kind of just this, pure golden boy type of character. But adding more dialogue, he became more of, he's definitely like the athlete, and people look up to him. But like inside, he doesn't really know what he's going to do with his life, and he's feeling all these pressures, and I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling. This playground area was the first area where we really got the like when we say the world used to be 2D, it meant you couldn't really move side to side when you were going. Like you could move a little bit, but not a lot. But
Right.
when John switched it over to a 3D kind of version, it means you can walk sort of all the way to the front of the screen and all these new layers of things start appearing. And this was the first area when we did that we really felt like, wow, this looks really cool. Like you can walk forward and see flowers, and then you can walk back and get closer to the tree.
Yeah, I actually have some videos of that. Let me first show the old 2D version. So this video also includes, this is what, that old jump from the forest to town would have been. We had kind of like zoomed out on the world. This is prototype back from July 2019. This is where we come to the playground, and this was also, at the time, we were prototyping the idea of, this was, meeting Chie. We didn't have any art for Chie yet, or even the final version of Sumire. And the idea was that they were gonna be trying to catch butterflies together. In this version, there was also a whole different mechanic for collectibles. In the first part of the game, that's where you were just collecting coins, and you'd have to get 4 coins to cross the stream. And then crossing the stream, you're trying to get dragonflies, and those dragonflies let you get into the next into the shrine. And here, to advance, you'd have to collect the butterflies. But it was working on this moment. We're adding kind of more elaborate back and forth movement, and another character moving around, and playing around with the idea of that platform that she can walk up onto. We also saw jumping at the time, but this is where we started having the idea, maybe this would work better in 3D. Maybe if we're going to have some more advanced minigames like this. We ended up not using this minigame, but this is where that idea started. So I'm just going to jump straight from there into, this was our first test right here of testing 3D. We used that same environment, this playground right here. This was... we tried it with Unity grass at the time. The grass system we have now is a different shader that we ended up using that worked better on the curved tile. Yeah, this was the first test right here of trying out 3D.
Yeah, those flowers, the first layer. Now the layer close to the camera started appearing. And again, the sky was all, keep maintaining that beautiful sky.
Yeah, it was nice on the tech side too, making that jump. And in 2D, it was a lot more having to deal with the sprite management and making sure everything's rendered in the right order. We'd had the background layer, then the ground layer, and then the foreground layer. In 3D, I think everything is now writing to the depth buffer, so we can actually just place things in the world, and then the sorting is handled a lot more just automatically. Jump back to the game here.
If you buy, Kenji wants to be a sneaker designer, so if you buy different shoes, he comments on your shoes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so this is when we started. This was like, the reason for this moment is really to introduce fast travel. So we tried to work it into the storyline, because we did want fast travel, and we wanted players to be able to hop around and finish all these tasks. But we didn't want to throw it right in the beginning. So this was kind of the flower pulling her away from Kenji was where we decided to introduce the fast travel concept.
Yeah, I think that's a moment where I've also seen some great reaction from some streamers, just like, what? He just pulled me, like, why? Why did he pull me away? Some people want to stay with Kenji, some people are already, a bit annoyed with Kenji at that point, but everyone's still pretty surprised when the flower just yoinks her away. So I was explaining before that we do some tutorial stuff in Yarn. So this conversation, this Yarn node that we're in right now, this is still that same node that we started with in the Kenji conversation. And throughout this Yarn node, we have commands like, you know, wait for notebook tutorial, and that's actually what's happening right now. Is just waiting for the player to, you know, choose the wisteria tree, make sure they understand how fast travel works.
For a long time, we actually had this like kind of version of the entire world. It was sort of this curved thing, and when the fast travel, she would actually jump and the world would kind of go underneath her. And then you know, we ended up doing it this way because it just seemed quicker, and then we didn't have to you know, we wanted, if we had used that, it would have had to look really, really good, but still be really easy to, you know, fly over and hit the different points.
Right.
So we kind of did more of a loading screen. Do you want to talk about the loading and saving, by the way? Because you know, that was another design choice. Is like, can you save, or does the game save each moment as you go?
Right.
And what we ended up with is, you know, a system where you kind of can't go back, and you can't go back to do your choices again.
Right. From the beginning, I set up a save system that, you know, was constantly keeping track of anything. So you could quit at any point, and your progress would be saved. The state of all the objects in the world would be saved, and you could come back and rejoin the game exactly where you were. But yeah, we ended up going down the route of having these save points that come up, and you can know your game is saving when, you know, in the corner there's a small flower animation. But a big part of that is also, you know, the theme of the game being one day and making the right choices and not having, you know, all of the time to do everything. We wanted your choices to have impact, and, you know, the player not to have the ability to easily, you know, go back to a previous save state. There's also only one save file in the game. That was an intentional choice as well, you know, not having a bunch of slots to, you know, experiment with Garma. You know, you have your one day. When you finish the game, you can do what we call another day, where there's some like small changes in the game. But yeah, the choices we made for saving were intentional to keep with that theme. There you go, that was a save point right there.
We've gotten a few retweets and likes. I think we'll just, when the stream is over, anyone who retweeted or liked our tweet there, we will pick and send out some game codes.
Yes, yeah, we are. If anyone's just joining us now, we are running a giveaway for Sumire game codes. And yeah, it looks like we'll be doing that after the stream now. But yeah, you should be seeing Erica's been posting the link to the tweet in chat. So yeah, go ahead and retweet that for a chance to win a code. Giving away a poster as well, right?
Yeah, we'll give away we have a Sumire poster that looks like the key art that we use on top of the you know, like the our homepage and the Steam store. It's just a really nice poster, so we'll give away one of those and a few codes. That little moment is just it's just funny because I think everybody knows that feeling of like, what are they talking about over there? And, you know, not everybody will sneak up on someone to find out what they're talking about, but I think it's a pretty human thing to wonder if someone's talking about you and what they're saying. So we made that little sneak. It's not even really a game, but just that kind of sneak up on Tomo and Kenji to find out what they're talking about. And Tomo, of course, is the meanest character in the game. Originally her name was Baddie, like Baddy, like baddie, and that was her name for a long time. But
just in case you didn't know she was bad, just in case.
Yeah, just in case. Talking about being like on the nose, but
it's actually still some parts of the code, even in the yarn dialogues, she's still listed as Baddie in a lot of places. So she'll forever be both, I think, both Baddie and Tomo. I just picked up the hat, which remind me, let me jump back to the rice field real quick. Let's talk to the Scarecrow again.
Yeah, the Scarecrow, like a lot of people miss it, but you need to go back and talk to him by lunchtime, which he actually says when you see him. But I think a lot of people kind of forget that happened. And if you don't get to him by lunch and kind of help him, then something bad happens to him.
Right. He asked you to come back after the wisteria tree and before lunch. So there's this kind of this window that you have to remember. But this mini game here is actually probably the one that's closest to that old idea of these sort of micro games that come up. Also, another one that we're really trying to connect the player and help the player understand the emotion Sumire is feeling in this moment. You know, she's trying to help this the Scarecrow. The crows are, you know, insulting him, and then she has to come up with, you know, what to say to basically counteract that insult. What's the compliment that she gives? No one cares. You're important to me. You're not even scary.
Yeah, like you said, this game is the most kind of old style minigame that we had, but I don't know, it does have some feeling to it where it's like the crows are just being totally vicious to this guy. And it was nice because, again, like it used to be in kind of a 2D cutaway, but it basically still looked like this. Like you still had the Scarecrow, you still had the crows coming in and talking to him. So it was a pretty easy one to move to the main game world. And then, you know, Nakazawa-san added the animations with the crows landing on him and talking in his ear. Have you seen a lot of people do that in the stream, John? I haven't. I don't think a lot of people go back and do that game.
No, I think it's something that players miss, but when they miss it, I think they understand it. I think, you know, it's you know, they realize, like, oh, like, I made a mistake in my day, but not every day is perfect. So I think yeah, the players I've seen it makes them want to do a replay. They want to play it again and see what happens if they actually visit the Scarecrow and, you know, make different choices. I think seeing the dead version, like, if you come back in the afternoon, you know, minor spoiler here, you actually see him kind of torn apart and not doing so well, and I think that's a motivating image for some players. So I'm gonna head back to playground again here.
Yeah, I think some people forget about the Scarecrow and they don't see what happened to him until like the final flyover at the very end. Now we're going past the playground. So here's Bo, the resident game designer.
He's one of the last characters added to the game, right?
So he was actually in the original story. Like, there was this Bo who was chasing the baseball around, but he wasn't going to be in the game. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know, at some point it was like, he's just kind of a cool, interesting character. He's kind of that, you know, especially in the game world of game designers, he's kind of that, you know, I think everyone has this kind of inner nerd, you know, that has these, you know, great creative ideas, but that nobody sees it.
Yeah, I think the line is actually coming up here. He says, "I'm playing a game, you won't care." I think, you know, I can be like this with, like, this game itself. You know, I worked on Sumire, but I talked to my friends about it. You know, they're, you know, competitive gamers, stuff like that. I'm like, it's a game, you probably won't like it though. So I can relate to Bo in that sense. You know, I don't think you'll like what I made.
But she does, John. She does like it.
Yeah, they do like.
At least she wants the good karma.
She lies about liking it.
That kneeling down next to him, that was another thing where, like, originally we only had the kneeling for the table at lunch.
Oh yeah.
But it's triggered by a yarn command, so suddenly you know, I could stick kneeling in here and there, and then if we liked it, then, you know, in this case we had to flip the animation.
Right. Once I gave Michael a yarn command he could use, he would just start using it anywhere he could, which was great. It was great. But I think that command is still called like sit at table. So all throughout the game, when we see Sumire leaning down, the command coming from yarn is actually sit at table. So or Seiza sit.
Erica designed these cards. So the idea was, of course, this is a card game designed by Bo. So he drew these cards. So we worked on a style, and then Erica drew all these cards that he uses in his game. Yeah, again, this game was, you know, so we wanted some variety. We wanted some kind of games that people would play during the game and some activities, so it's not just reading dialogue the whole time. This particular game was kind of designed literally with cutting index cards in half and kind of, you know, making these cards and like trying it out. The thing that most links the game to the story is how Sumire and Bo are talking during the game. So it's supposed to be the feeling like you're sitting with your friend and they're teaching you how to play something, and then you start kind of talking about life and different things. So I think it works pretty well. The game's like relatively simple because the player has to learn it when they, you know, just in one go, the player has to understand what's happening.
Also, another great way to add some depth to the characters. You know, Bo, he made this game about people in the town. You know, his classmates, Scarecrow, Tanaka House, and really kind of just adds a bit more depth and explanation to characters and places you see in the story.
We're talking about adding.
I've never had two 4 crows before. I've never seen that.
Whoa! Yeah, there's only like 2 in the deck.
Yeah.
Originally, each player had a separate deck, so it was a little bit of a deck building thing, but of course we didn't want to actually have them building the deck, like that was going to be too much. So I think it was actually Erica who said, hey, why not just one deck? And then they just kind of deal the cards from one deck. It has some pretty simple AI, but one of the AI changes was to make sure that the Bo didn't always play a defense card if he had it, so there's a certain chance whether he will or will not, because originally he always played a defense card, so you knew if he didn't have any. So we wanted to give him a little more of a human thing of, you know, should I, shouldn't I, you know, try to trick the other player into thinking you don't have any defense left.
Right, because that's what the player's doing themselves. You know, if like we only have one crow card coming in, and you have full health, then you might make the choice to just tank that damage.
This is the Tanaka House cursing. I think the best change to this game would actually be to have cards fail sometimes. So the Tanaka card there in the middle makes a 50% chance for a card to fail. But I think if there was like a small chance for cards to fail throughout the game, it would be a little more nerve-wracking. Yeah, see, John, you played it so many times. You're well,
I did take a risk there. Let's go 2 times damage. I played the 50% miss and then attacked with my best card, but still got the hit there.
There's a card in there that does double damage to the other player and 1 damage back to you. That's inspired by Dicey Dungeons, which is a game I really like. There's a power in Dicey Dungeons where you do like double damage, but then single damage back to yourself.
Oh,
so
really?
This game's kind of cool. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool mechanic. And there it is.
Alright, I can hit this and then use my mirror on his next attack. Oh gosh. Is it worth it?
For a 1?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah.
There we go.
Here we go.
One of the achievements in the game it's called Better Than the Boys. It's both beating Bo at this minigame here, and then later on you play another minigame with Kenji. And if you beat them both, then you get that achievement. It's actually pretty challenging. I think if you're going for that achievement, the AI suddenly steps up in both minigames, so.
You gonna tell him it was fun?
Yeah. I'm kind of keeping pretty karma neutral, making some good, some bad decisions here.
You can see the clouds in the background. You know, Bo has kind of a cloud over his head.
Yeah, this style on Bo himself, that kind of comes from like an anime, what would you call it? It's not style, like a certain.
Yeah, it's like a drawing effect that's used. The kind of hatched shadows along his back.
That's to sort of convey his emotion, his like emotion of loneliness, is it?
Yeah. Originally, I just wanted like a cloud, but so the sun was shining on everything except him. So there would be
that's
kind of
right,
like
yeah.
first sun theme.
I think I remember you sending that on Discord, like a little image of the cloud like above him. Yeah.
But Nakazawa-san just used the thought it was really cool to just use the kind of manga effect.
Mm-hmm.
There's another kneel. That was the second time I realized I could make her kneel anywhere.
She's sitting down at the table again.
Yeah, so you know we're about to head into the bench, which was this is another thing we kind of went back and forth about. Like in the game now, when you go approach the bench, it's a point of no return. You know, for a while we were talking about, so you could go to the bench, go past the bench to the Tanaka house, like, you know, kind of come back and walk around. But we ended up being, you know, this is like one of the kind of gates in the game where you can't really go back. Like once this happens, you're kind of in lunch. You go into the Tanaka house and then you go to lunch. So that's a gate, we called them. So we had this little kind of moment where she talks to the flower before that happens.
Right, just make sure the player knows that they're kind of coming up to that moment right there.
Exactly.
Especially because of things like the Scarecrow, you know, where you know, if you have to go back to him at some point. Make sure the player gets that chance.
The bad bench.
Yeah, I think this might have ended up being one of the most complex yarn nodes in the game, just with all of the, you know, we have 3 characters now, well, 4 including the flower, soon to be 5 when Chie comes in.
Yeah, plus it's really long. It just goes, you know, on and on and on with the dialogue, and then all the events get triggered.
Another eye close. This eye close is a bit different. You know, the other ones are more, you know, Sumire closing her eyes and thinking about her feelings, but here it's actually Batty and Yuko, or sorry, Tomo and Yuko telling her to close her eyes.
My favorite part of the scene is the crow hanging out on the fence back there. And then John made a command to make him fly away, so like the crow gets upset at the same time everybody else does. Yeah, this moment was pretty hard to construct because, you know, we wanted, like, it's actually a pretty big bullying moment, but we don't have a lot of super elaborate animations where, you know, people are directly interacting a lot. And this whole thing of, like, she's trying to, you know, this notebook is obviously special to Sumire, and the Chie is trying to grab her notebook. And so John made this kind of animation where it kind of jerks in from the side as if she's grabbing it.
Yeah, I think that moment especially, it's if you think about what's going on, it's pretty intense. It's a very personal list, which, you know, took this more emotional shape, you know, imagining just anyone seeing that, but let alone like these bullies, you know, seeing her own name on there, you know.
Yeah, originally, I don't think it's in there anymore. Originally, there was a line where they were going to read it to the whole school or something like that.
Yeah, I think early on, you know, talking about development, we actually brought up the story, is it Harriet the Spy?
Yes.
Yeah, of just, you know, a story. That's the story about a girl who, like, writes everything down. She wants to be a newspaper journalist.
Yeah, and she goes around writing about everyone in her notebook, and then I think at the end, like her notebook is actually stolen by somebody, and then everyone gets to see what she was writing about.
Right.
There goes the crow, flying off.
Along with GA. And now we're in the Tanaka house.
Yeah, I think we're about at an hour and a half, so I think we'll wrap up right after the Tanaka house, but we can say a little bit more. So the Tanaka house is kind of a mirrored version of her house. So it was done in the same way with the same kind of systems and actually like almost the same layout, but it's sort of the kind of dark version of her house. We have a lot of cool little effects like this not being able to see around her and the candle in the light and these call outs.
Yeah, originally we actually had, so there's these interactives, the Tanaka interactives, which are set up slightly different than other interactives. So we have the red and black question mark, and it sort of advances just this ghostly voice coming to you, which this is Chie, right? That we hear.
Yeah, calling to her. So the idea was like she's somewhere in the house and you're hearing her voice kind of calling out to you.
But originally we didn't have the icons at all. We wanted it to be kind of to give more of that horror vibe of just like looking closely at the environment and trying to pick out what you're supposed to do. We had all of these icons, the red and black icons that come up. Those are completely hidden. But we realized that players are missing it and testing that they weren't finding these things at all. So we ended up just creating the separate icon for it.
And then the original maze was actually like a 2D top-down, like Nightmare Pac-Man, basically.
Yeah, that's definitely the mini game that I wish I had a video of that right here, but it went from a very simple 2D mini game that came up on the screen to an entire mini scene. And this is something that Erica also worked on a lot herself.
Again, we got the cool music, perfect for the effect. This maze used to be pretty empty because again, like the original idea was kind of a top-down, like the rats are coming to get you. Can you find Chie? Like you have to get the candle and then go find Chie. And then when we kind of switched to this mode, it looks really good and keeps you more immersed. But originally there wasn't a lot like happening. There weren't a lot of things to do or people to talk to. So we kind of sprinkled the characters through to add some, again, like this is obviously Sumire is kind of going into her subconscious now, kind of some of the things she's afraid of or holding on to that she can't talk about.
We also realized a lot of people kind of liked hearing more about the family. So in some of these dead ends, we end up having, some conversations with, because you'd call them ghosts of her family. So here's Dad, but it's actually not really a conversation.
Yeah, he won't talk. The strong silent type. This is another part where having the longer walkway and with the music, it kind of lets the player get into the feeling a little bit more.
To keep with the whole horror feeling and the mystery of this, we don't really explain what's going on here too well. So, Sumire has a candle now, and then she comes into these, side rooms and sees these other items, and we kind of leave it to the player to figure out what they're supposed to do with these. We're about to come up to another. This is one of my favorite adaptive music changes here. So this song playing right now, this was the same kind of ambience we heard when we first were in the Tanaka house back on the tile. Then we came in, the music changed. Now we're about to hit the third layer when we talk to Mom. Brings in that other, sets the guitar there. Another part in the song.
I think they enjoyed working on the music a lot because there was a lot to work with. And it's kind of fun to do something like this where you have a, kind of a sinister feeling that kind of grows as you go along. It's something like they could really sink their teeth into.
Right.
Mom looks really strange as a shadow.
This dark version of the flower, it's I really wish we saw him more. We see him, pick up Chie, and then we see him here. But really cool animation. I guess maybe it's a good thing it just seen so briefly. Leaves more of an impact.
You can see the eyes. He's got like eyeballs on his petals. Like the outer ring of petals actually has eyes opening and closing.
Is that symbolic of something there?
It's actually picked up. I think it's actually picked up from like one of those Buddhist statues or something.
Ah, okay.
But it works well to be really creepy looking. Yeah, this was actually pretty challenging to line this up because we wanted the player to understand that Chie was going to end up in the wisteria tree, and that's where she needs to go back, and she's kind of captured there. But of course, we're not at the wisteria tree. We're in a completely different location. So kind of, making this mental bridge that the player has to understand that Chie is held in that kind of power center of the wisteria tree. It was a little tricky. We kind of backed ourselves into a corner because we had the maze in one location and the wisteria tree somewhere else. But I think we were able to smooth it over. Like Erica put these wisteria branches here, and I think we got it across good enough.
Yeah, just kind of place the hint right there, as well as some more hints later on from the flower and about where to go next. Coming out of the maze there, when you're back in the Tanaka house here, we got it to kind of suddenly be a bit brighter. The music's gone. Just suddenly feel like, oh, it's just an old house.
Yeah, just an old deserted. No interactables. And this is the first point where the flower loses petals. So the idea that the flower is slowly dying during the day, this is the first time you see that happening.
Actually, fun fact, whenever the flower starts to lose his petals, they first start to turn yellow. I think in the animation we call them the Autumnal Flower. So here you see the yellow one, and he actually fully loses those petals once you fast travel. Fast travel is the point where those ones actually fall off. So you'll see, like right now he has that yellow petal, and later on when there's even less petals, this will happen again. And then after fast traveling, that one falls off. But yeah, so if you were playing the game right now, at this point, you would go home, get some lunch, talk to Mom. But I think this is where we're going to be wrapping it up, right?
Yeah, I think this is a good spot.
Okay.
We have a demo up now. If you want to try the demo goes all the way through the list making from the beginning to the list making. That's on Steam.
You can play about the first half an hour of the game for free on Steam right now. And if you do try out the demo, we actually just updated both the demo and the full game. If you play the demo and then get the full game, you can continue your save file exactly where you left off. And even get the Steam achievements if you got any during the demo.
All right. Thanks for watching.
But yeah, and again, reminder, we wanted to do giveaways during the stream, but we're actually begin doing them after we end here. So if Erica, you could post that Twitter link in chat one last time. Anybody watching right now, first of all, thank you for watching, but if you do want to enter a giveaway to win a copy of Sumire, or possibly also a Sumire poster, click that link and just retweet that tweet, and we will be picking 4 winners, and we'll get in touch with you if you're one of those winners. I guess we'll also post them on Twitter as well, who won the giveaways. Yeah, also, if you guys want to, let us know in chat or through Twitter, give us any feedback if you enjoyed this stream today. We're considering maybe in the future doing more dev streams like this, maybe doing one in Japanese as well. This was obviously an English dev stream today, but Sumire was made by a lot of people who are, speak different languages, and yeah, that's something that we're considering. So yeah, any final words, Michael?
No, just we got a lot of good feedback on the game. We're always happy to listen to what people say, and we're happy that people are enjoying it.
Yeah. Thank you all again for coming today. Thank you for everyone who has played Sumire, all the streamers. You guys, we really appreciate you guys. So, yeah, we're gonna end it here. We'll see you later. Have a good one.
See you later.